There's a type of place in the world that seems to exist in two times at once. Socorro, New Mexico, is one of those places. On one hand, it's a quiet rural town, nestled in the vastness of the desert. On the other, its skies are scanned by gigantic radio antennas, listening for the deepest secrets of the universe. It is a place where the silence of ancient land meets humanity's quest for cutting-edge science. It was against this backdrop of contrasts in 1964 that a lawman, known for his unwavering integrity, became the central witness to an event that would challenge the very science surrounding him. He wasn't looking for mysteries. He was just doing his job. But what found him on that April afternoon left scars not only on the desert soil, but on the history of ufology. This is not just a story of lights in the sky. It is the story of a close encounter, documented, investigated by the highest military ranks, and yet, 60 years later, as unexplained as the day it happened. This is the story of Officer Lonnie Zamora, and the day reality was interrupted, April 24th, 1964. The clock was approaching 5:45 p.m. The afternoon sun cast a golden, merciless light over the arid landscape on the outskirts of Socorro. Officer Lonnie Zamora, a 31-year-old veteran respected for his courage and integrity, was patrolling the town's limits alone. It was a day like any other until it wasn't. A black Chevrolet tore through the tranquility of the road, speeding past him. Police instinct took over. Zamora turned his patrol car around and began the chase, but the fate of that afternoon would not be decided by a traffic violation. A few moments into the pursuit, a violent sound cut through the air, a roar, deep and resounding. Almost simultaneously, his eyes were drawn to the southwest. Less than a mile away, over a small hill, a vibrant bluish-orange flame shot up into the sky. A cloud of dust rose with unusual force, as if something heavy had just touched down. Zamora's mind, trained to find logical explanations, raced to the only possibility he knew. A small shack in the area, used to store dynamite, must have exploded. The priority shifted instantly. Someone's life could be at risk. He abandoned the chase of the Chevrolet, turned onto a rough dirt road, and headed toward the smoke and fire, which he could no longer see. The ensuing silence was almost as disturbing as the earlier noise. He drove slowly, his eyes scanning the terrain, looking for debris, for victims, for an explanation. That's when he saw it. About 150 to 200 yards away, the afternoon sun cast a blinding glare off a metallic object. His first impression was of a common tragedy, a white car overturned in a small gully. Near the object, he distinguished two figures. They looked like people, dressed in white coveralls. He thought of teenagers, perhaps injured after an accident. He sped up, the urgency to provide aid taking over. On the radio, he informed dispatch that he would be investigating a possible accident. As he got closer, one of the figures seemed to notice his presence. It reacted with a start, a jump of surprise, almost of panic. Zamora stopped his patrol car about 80 feet from the site. And it was from this distance that reality began to unravel. That was not a car. It was an oval object, almost egg-shaped, made of a whitish, incredibly smooth aluminum. There wasn't a single window, no visible door. It rested on 4 metallic legs or struts extending from its base. The contrast with the rocky, dusty terrain was absolute, as if a piece from another world had been placed there. And the figures, they weren't teenagers. They were smaller, the height of children, but with the proportions of small adults, as he would later describe them. Their white coveralls covered their entire bodies. They wore no helmets or any head protection. The shock of the sight was so intense that Zamora barely had time to process the details of the occupants. All he knew was that he was facing something that didn't belong there, or anywhere he knew. Before he could form a plan, the scene escalated. The two figures, perhaps alerted by his arrival, moved quickly and disappeared into the object. He still didn't understand how, as he saw no opening. Lonnie grabbed the radio microphone again, his voice now laced with a new urgency, informing dispatch he would be out of touch to investigate. The moment he made the call, he heard a sharp, metallic sound, like a hatch or door slamming shut. He opened the car door to get out, and in the movement, his portable radio fell to the floor. As he bent down to pick it up, the sound he had heard before, the roar, returned. But this time, it was different. It started as a low rumble and grew to an unbearable volume and frequency, a sound that hurt the ears. From beneath the object, the same blue-orange flame erupted, but with no smoke. The force of the propulsion kicked up dust and rocks all around. Panic, pure and primitive, finally broke the officer's paralysis. That piercing noise sounded like something about to explode. All he could think about was taking cover. Zamora started running away in the opposite direction. In his desperation, he tripped and fell. His glasses flew from his face. Without hesitation, he got up and kept running, seeking any shelter. He looked back one last time and saw the object now about 20 feet high. It was then that he noticed an insignia on the side of the object, a red symbol with an arrow pointing up over a kind of arch. He threw himself behind some bushes, his heart hammering in his chest, as the strange craft moved away silently, passing dangerously close to the dynamite shack before disappearing over the hills. Everything, from the moment the sound started until the object vanished, lasted perhaps 20 seconds. Still trembling, Lonnie returned to his patrol car. The first person he called was his colleague, State Police Sergeant Sam Chavez. When Chavez arrived, he found a man he barely recognized. Lonnie Zamora, the calm and collected officer, was pale, sweating profusely, and in a visible state of shock. Pointing to the gully, Zamora asked Chavez to see for himself. What the sergeant found was more than just the word of a frightened colleague. It was physical evidence. Some bushes were still smoking, scorched and charred, and on the ground, the most powerful testimony. The soil was marked with an unmistakable pattern. 4 deep, rectangular impressions, exactly where Lonnie said the landing struts had been. Near them, 4 other smaller, rounded depressions. Chavez conducted a complete sweep of the area. There were no footprints, human or otherwise. There were no tire tracks, except for those from Lonnie's patrol car. It was as if the object had descended vertically from the sky and departed the same way, leaving behind only its scars on the earth and in the mind of the officer who saw it. The story of a police officer couldn't be easily dismissed, but the case gained overwhelming strength when it was discovered that Lonnie Zamora was not alone in his experience. The echoes of the event in the gully spread throughout the region. A family of tourists from Colorado, at a gas station south of Socorro, reported that an oval-shaped object the size of a car whizzed by just a few feet above them, nearly tearing the roof off their vehicle. They clearly remembered seeing, moments later, a police car heading up the hill in the direction the object went. It was Lonnie's car. The gas station attendant confirmed having spoken with the terrified family. 3 other witnesses, independently and before Zamora's story became news, went to the police station to report a bright object ascending into the sky that same afternoon. And the phenomenon wasn't limited to Socorro. About 195 miles to the north in La Madera, on the same day, another witness saw an oval object on the ground that left identical burn marks and landing support imprints as it took off with a whitish blue flame. 2 days later, back in Socorro, a resident woke up in the middle of the night to her horses panicking. When she went outside, she saw an object resembling a butane gas tank resting on the ground. As she approached, it took off with a bluish-white flame, leaving behind the same rectangular and round marks. What Lonnie saw was not an isolated vision. It was the epicenter of a wave of sightings. Within hours, Socorro was no longer a quiet town. The Army, the FBI, and investigators from Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official UFO investigation, descended on the site. The area was sealed off, soil and vegetation samples were collected, and photographs were confiscated. Dr. J. Allen Hynek, the project's consulting astronomer, investigated personally and was shocked. The samples revealed abnormal levels of radioactivity. For Hynek, the combination of an impeccably reliable witness with physical evidence and corroborating witnesses made the Zamora case one of the strongest ever recorded. Of course, conventional explanations emerged. The most famous was that it was all an elaborate prank by technology students. They had allegedly used a modified hot air balloon to trick the officer. But this theory crumbles under scrutiny. The speed, the sound, the ability to hover, and the instant takeoff were far beyond the technology of any balloon, especially in 1964. Furthermore, a project of this magnitude would require planning and construction, and no witness to such an undertaking has ever come forward. Another theory suggested a secret prototype of a lunar landing module for the Apollo program. However, official records showed no tests were scheduled for that day or location. The government denied it was one of its craft. Earthly explanations simply did not fit the facts. The flying object left in seconds, but the consequences for Lonnie Zamora lasted the rest of his life. The respected police officer became a target of ridicule. The weight of his testimony and the constant harassment led him to resign from the police force just 2 years later. He spent the rest of his life avoiding the subject, working simple jobs, seeking the peace that was stolen from him that afternoon. He passed away in 2009, taking the certainty of what he saw with him. In the same year, shortly before his own death, Sergeant Sam Chavez, the first to arrive on the scene, made a confession. He admitted that while driving to meet Lonnie, he too saw the object, speeding away over the mountains. Today, the landing site in Socorro is marked by a circle of rocks, a silent memorial maintained by enthusiasts. It's located about 3 miles from the city, as residual radioactivity in the soil made the area unsuitable for a long time. They say that in the exact spots where the object's struts touch the ground, nothing has ever grown again. A permanent scar, a reminder that, for a brief moment, our world was visited by something we still cannot comprehend. The Lonnie Zamora case remains a pillar in ufological studies, not for being the most spectacular, but for being one of the most solid. A lawman, physical evidence, multiple witnesses, and the inability of official explanations to close the file. It leaves us with the question, if it wasn't ours, whose was it? What does your intuition say about today's account? What detail from the Zamora case is, for you, the piece that defines the entire puzzle? We want to hear your theory in the comments. Every like is a bright signal to the YouTube algorithm, showing that the exploration of mysteries like this must continue. It's the support that drives us to go deeper into the next case